Hey guys, welcome to Midwest Fantasy Football League, the start of Season 10. Got a few new tricks for videos this season. The webcam is one. I upgraded from 720p to 1080p so that way you can make all the fine details of my ugly face. Or I bought a ring light so that way I have proper lighting when I get to record these in December at 10 p.m. at night. The improvements aren't all just hardware. We're going to try a few new tricks in the video editor as well, like this little guy. Week 1 is in the books, and I would have thought by adding 2 extra teams, average scoring would have probably gone down, but Week 1 didn't really work out that way. Average scores this week were 113.1. All other Week 1s have averaged out to be 109.9. That's probably a small sample size versus 9 years of averages, but it's still a thing. Week 1's top score and biggest blowout goes to Brandon's blown call, thumping my hilarious no way I win this, 138.1 to 76.9, a 62.2 point margin of victory. Brandon was led by Patrick Mahomes with 33.3 points, Rob Gronkowski with 25, Nick Chubbs with 21.1, and Pittsburgh with 18.1. It was a good first week for you as you ran out nearly a perfect lineup from your team, only missing out on 3 points or so that you could have gained by benching Mike Evans in favor of Henry Ruggs. On the other hand, in a more traditional fashion, both of my best players were sitting on my bench, with Antonio Brown putting up 21.2 and Darrell Henderson adding 15.2 more. Fortunately for me, it really wouldn't have even mattered if I'd have subbed them out. Oh, and I lost Raheem Mostert for the year after 2 plays. Yeah, 2 plays. What he said. Brandon picks up right where he left off after last season's championship, starting out 1-0 and putting himself in first place at the top of the standings with the most scored points in Week 1. And I'm now in last. Fuck! Nick's T-Boner is rowing, rises above Pope 2.0's pew-pews in this week's closest matchup, grabbing the win 133.3 to 126.6, a 6.7 point margin of victory. As evidenced by the score, this was a tight battle, with the quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses pretty much balancing each other out. Nick's 38 combined points from Keenan Allen and Tyler Lockett outscored Pope 2.0's starting duo of Chris Godwin and Terry McLaurin by 11 points. Pope 2.0's flex of Cooper Kupp, however, outscored Nick's Damian Harris by 7 points. That equals out to 4 of the 6 points that this game ended up being a margin of victory for. Pope 2.0, he put up a loss with 126.5 points. It's not the greatest feeling in the world. You're the first loser at the moment, however, sitting in 8th place. With the win, Nick slides into 2nd. Tom's Tualupa knocked off the Deuce's Double Dicker and Double Deuce, 124 to 101.8.
Oh boy, that's a tongue twister.
I had a little blurb here about having to try to say that every week, and while I was sitting here and setting up these things, Alex actually texted me and wanted to say that doesn't really roll off the tongue. He wants to rename his team, so I appreciate that. Thanks, bud. Tualupa got 25.7 points from Adam Thielen, 24.2 from Corey Davis, 18 from Lamar Jackson, and 15.3 from Miles Sanders. Gotta love the randomness that is the tight end position, as this week Mike Gesicki gave you a healthy pile of nothing with 0 points on 2 targets and no catches.
It's not ideal.
Hey, speaking about a big pile of something, how about that Aaron Rodgers guy? What a pile of fail. His 1.32 points were a major drag on this squad as you put up 100 points and got almost nothing from the QB spot. Led by 22.6 from Travis Kelce and 17.7 from San Francisco's D, you took a lead into Monday night, but facing Lamar Jackson, Baltimore's defense, and Dan Carlson, who combined for 37 points, you only had a 3% chance of holding on to the win. Still, you only lost by 22. Jason's best of time, blurst of times, knocked off Drew's Scamper CMC 121.1 to 109.1. If you don't understand Jason's team name, please allow me to enlighten you.
This is 1,000 monkeys working at 1,000 typewriters. Soon, they'll have written the greatest novel known to man. Let's see. It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. You stupid monkey! Oh, shut up.
With the start I had, I'm pretty sure that those monkeys could probably put together a better fantasy football team than my own. Anyway, the Times were led by 35.4 points from Amari Cooper and 22.3 from Melvin Gordon. Josh Allen and Jarvis Landry each added 17 more. I thought I had the worst running back performance, but somehow apparently Ronald Jones was worse. Even though Tampa Bay ran up a decent score, he put up a negative 0.6 points on Thursday Night Football. Just 14 yards rushing and a fumble. Not a great look from one of your keepers. For Drew, you got 30 points from Tom Brady, 23.2 from CMC, and a pair of 16-point games from Josh Jacobs and Marvin Jones Jr. You certainly had plenty of players to point the finger at in this one.
Finger pointing gets us nowhere!
Shall we start with Jacksonville's defense, who drug you down 3 points into the hole? I wrote part of this recap in a bit different order. I didn't write it all in the same route, and I definitely did today's waiver wire grabs before I got to your recap. Strangely, you opted to drop Jacksonville after they got lit up this week by Houston in favor of Cleveland's defense, who plays Houston this weekend.
No, sir, this is not the time to double down.
I guess we'll see how that works out for you. Also, you only got 0.3 points from Brandon Ayuk and 1.8 from Robert Tonyan. You could have easily won this game by swapping out Deebo Samuel for Brandon Ayuk. That swap would have gotten you a win and this week's top score. Opted for the wrong San Francisco receiver. That won't be a fun decision to try to make every week. You might as well just start them both so that way you can be right half the time. Moving on, Chris's two men and a defense knocked off Pope 1.0's Serenity Now, 127.2 to 88.4. Chris got 34.6 points from Tyreek Hill, 27.1 from Russell Wilson, and 16.6 from Alvin Kamara. Similar to Brandon, you had a nearly perfect lineup in. Only could have snagged a couple extra points by benching Marquez Callaway in favor of Darnell Mooney. Personally, I'm kind of surprised that Callaway only had one catch for 14 yards, especially with Winston throwing 5 touchdowns on the day. But I guess with him only having to throw for 150 yards to do that, there really wasn't a lot of yards to rack up. For Pope 1.0, you got 23.3 points from DeAndre Hopkins and 19 points from Trevor Lawrence in his first start. Not bad. Unfortunately, the power couple of Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones kind of fizzled out for you this week. They combined for only 12.4 points. Mark Andrews had a quiet game as well, scored 3.5 points despite Baltimore ended up putting up 27 points. Derek's a motherfucker. Defeated Lee's Daxtein mandate 131.4 to 118.6. Derek was led by 33.6 points from Kyler Murray, 21.6 from TJ Hawkinson, 18.2 from Mike Williams, and 16 from the Rams defense versus the Bears. The Rams defense really benefited from the fourth down stop points as they stopped the Bears 4 different times on fourth downs in that game. I read an article today that said the teams went for fourth down 51 times this weekend, an all-time high in a single NFL week. Previous high was like 36 or 35, something like that, in week 1 last year, actually. Will teams continue to play hyperly aggressive, or will some return to punting more often? The numbers say you're supposed to go for it on fourth down a lot more often. However, you have to imagine that when the weather starts to get crappy and coaches get on the hot seat, they're probably going to fall back into the old ways of punting all the time. But we'll see what happens. Back on Derek, you didn't have a great day from your two running backs. You only got 4.9 points from Ezekiel Elliott and 6.9 from James White. It didn't really matter, though. With the win, you landed in third place after week 1, trailing just Brandon and Nick. Lee, you got 30.4 from the namesake Dak Prescott, 18.7 from Brandon Cooks, and 17.4 from Dalvin Cook. You didn't really have a poor game from anyone other than your kicker. Rodrigo Blankenship only had 3.1 points for you on a single 21-yard field goal and an extra point. 118 points is also a tough loss to swallow. Trent's Goodell Castro sneaks past Josh's oh god this again, 96.5 to 84.9. Trent got 20.4 points from CD Lamb and 18.6 from Joe Burrow. You got a pair of 14-point games from Jonathan Taylor and Robbie Gould, plus another 12 from Robbie Anderson. A win is a win, but sometimes it may not feel like one. 96 points was only going to beat 3 teams this week, and you happen to be matched against one of them. Josh, I assume, didn't get a chance to get Odell Beckham Jr. out of his starting lineup. He put up 0 points for you, standing in street clothes along the sideline, being held out of the game with his left knee still not being ready for game action. You could have swapped him out for James White, who did put up 9.1 points. As bad as the 0 spot from Beckham was, at least it was better than the negative 3.08 Green Bay's defense put up. Somehow worse than Jacksonville. Must have been a Florida thing. Some notes from Nick's stat corner that I haven't hit on already. This was Brandon's 6th high score all time. Jason hits his 60th career win. Drew's loss moves you to an even 500 record in the regular season, sitting at a nice 53-53. Derek continues to dominate Lee all time, now 9 wins to just 3 losses. The new guys both won this week. Congrats, Tom and Trent, for that. You joined Brandon and Eric as week 1 winners when they were joined as expansion teams. For historical purposes, the other 2 teams that were added via expansion were Drew and Lee, and they both lost week 1. So new teams are 4-2 overall as their first week into the league. Nick was nice enough to point out that my crappy score of this week of a 77 was the 7th worst score ever in week 1. So that's a big thumbs down for me. Chris continues to stay hot early in the season, now having won 6 straight season openers. Pope 2.0 and myself are currently tied for the longest losing streak to start the seasons at 3 games. This week's notable waiver wire claims start with Eli Mitchell. It seems like everybody thinks that he's going to get a lot of the work now in the Niners' backfield after Raheem Mostert went down with season-ending injury after 2 plays this last weekend. Chris was the top bidder with $31 bid. There were 6 other owners that were going after that, and nobody had a bid of under $15, so a lot of people were interested in that, but Chris was the high guy. Mark Ingram was the next top target, with 3 teams bidding for his services, going to Pope 1.0 for $15. Also, several people really wanted Cleveland's defense. It definitely wasn't that they had a good week in week 1, where they only scored 1.34 points. Maybe people aren't buying into that offense that torched the Jacksonville Jaguars last weekend. They scored 37 points in a win. Drew's definitely on the anti-Houston train. He was the winning bid with $2. With the extra week of regular season play and the addition of 2 extra teams, I had to recalculate out what the winnings would be. Here's what the before and after for last year are compared to this year. This has been in the league constitution for a couple of months. I didn't really bother to get it approved since I figured nobody really cares that much. If I'm wrong and you want to change it, you want to maybe see more money in the weekly prizes and less into the postseason total, we can add it to the list of items to vote on in the postseason. It's week 1, so that means that it's got to be wager corner, right? I mean, or some fresh wagers. Only a couple came in, and I'm in both of them. The 2 Scots have a wager for a 6-pack on who will correctly pick more of the playoff teams. Additionally, Drew Ritchie and I have a wager for a 6-pack on the Jets. We were sitting and talking last Sunday while we were watching football, and I think the Jets will get to 4 wins this year, and he will take the under on that. This week's beer of choice is No Bad Trip from Tripping Animals Brewery in Florida. It is a sour, so most of you would probably hate it. I think there's a couple of sour fans in here. That's it. Good luck to everybody in week 2. Until next week, unless I see you before then.